I'm your host, J. Drew Silvers, and this is the Where We End Up podcast. Today, I'm talking to my friend Shannon, who goes by the name Aurvgon on social media and online. So, thank you for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And so it's kind of hard for me to explain exactly what you do, but we're gonna get to that probably a little bit later, a little bit deeper, because this episode is something that I was excited about because we followed each other for years, we've known of each other for years, but we didn't actually speak and connect like even in a DM sense at all until I asked you to do the podcast with me. What was that, like an inevitable for you, or was that more of like did you think like eventually we're gonna talk because we followed each other for so long, or was it just like, we're just gonna exist like this probably?
I figured I'd eventually maybe our paths would cross in real life one day, but I was completely taken off guard and didn't expect to be invited to do something like this and was super honored and thrilled and excited. So thank you.
So you just go from like absolutely nothing to just jumping like
Yeah,
completely in.
yeah, absolutely. It's the
Yeah,
way to do it.
yeah, I love that. So I'll give you a little, I'll give you a slight intro of like me and where I came from. Some of it you may know, and some of it you may not, and then we'll do a little drop, a little transition into maybe your origin and where you came from and where you're heading, I guess. So like because you've been following me for a long time, you know I do woodworking, and I'm a second generation carpenter, and my dad jumped me into that, and even though very reluctantly. Um, I hated it, but initially, because I didn't know any better. I didn't understand the trade, the craft. My dad was a warehouse manager for a nut bolt fastener supply type company, but he was a weekend woodworker, like heavy, like in this little shed that used to be a hay barn that was behind our house. And all I just remember is like him working a long, long week, coming home with his work shirt smelling like grease from the nut and bolt factory type place that he worked, and then waking up early on a Saturday morning and staying in that shop all day and just being covered in pine dust and oak dust and maple dust and everything else, and making these just awesome furniture pieces that took forever. But it was part passion and part like survival, I guess, which I didn't quite appreciate as much when I was younger. But as I got older and went through my own hardships and everything else, I grew to appreciate it. There was a brief period of time, I had no interest in it prior to this, but there was a brief period of time where I took a gap year between my senior year of high school and starting my first semester of college, 2005. And I took that gap year, and I didn't know what to do with that time. I had to work, had to work. I didn't have a choice. I'd been working since I was like 14. Um, but I had to find something else to do, and he needed help. And at that time, he had left his distribution warehouse manager job, and he had moved into doing commercial trim work for a while. And he trimming out restaurants with wood stuff and whatever. And then he started doing like home renovations, like small home renovations, kitchen upgrades and decks and that kind of stuff. And so for about a year, I worked with him doing that, and still didn't like it. Still wasn't a fan. It was just something that I had to do to make money. And then went off, and during college, I'm working server at a restaurant, ended up in the country club, golf course, private sector stuff, and did that for 5 straight years, and then lost all of that because of the economic reasons and the company I worked for mismanaging things. They would probably disagree, but as far as I'm concerned, they mismanaged a bunch of things and cut us out. So I got laid off and fell right back into this, and I found my own niche. I'm completely different. I'm in a completely different path than what my dad still does. He's semi-retired now, but he still makes kitchen cabinets and things like that. And I'm not interested in that. That was never something I liked. But I found my own way to do it, and thankfully through online community and through people like you, who support from afar, I guess you'd say. It has worked thus far up to 2023. But I guess you never know where the world's gonna take you and all of that. And
Oh,
it,
definitely.
yeah, it everything is a journey, and that was a very brief cap of where I came from and where I currently land. Not so much where I'm heading, but let's start at the very beginning. Um, as early as you want. Let's start there and just see how far we get.
Yeah, yeah, and it does start early. I grew up wanting to always be a fashion designer and would, draw clothes and like always thought, oh, I'm gonna do this, but then became like almost a pipe dream, like, oh, this is too far out of reach. I could never do this. Like, this is just fun. I enjoy it. And I think at about 11, I had my existential crisis and decided there's no place for me in this.
At 11?
At 11, it was very early, and after that, everything was hard. Everything was hard. I decided there's no place for me in the workforce, or there's nothing I really want to do. There's nothing I can do. So I just kind of became almost a dropout of life. It was weird. Like school became hard. I stopped going at around eighth grade, and
Really?
then yeah, and so as soon as I got into high school, I was there for half a semester, and I just was out. I couldn't do it anymore. I was like, there's no point to this. I couldn't find a reason why I'm spending all my time doing this, and it really felt like it was beating the creativity out of me, which is all I really had and all I valued. So I was like, this isn't for me.
Where was this? Where were you from initially?
Southern California,
Okay.
born in San Clemente,
Okay.
but this was in Upland at the time of the high school, and through that, I was like, it's not for me, and went into independent study to at least appease my parents and, get that paper because that's the most that I could at least give them to be like, hey, I'm not a complete failure. I at least have this paper. I can get a job with that.
Something tangible.
Something else. And so that was always the point. I'm like, okay, I made an agreement with them. I'm going to go to independent study and, I'll try and get work. And so at least that's more productive than going to school for something I'm never going to use.
Yeah.
So I left and, at this point, couldn't find a job. I was terrible at interviews, like not, it
Just
was
like
awful.
17-ish.
Yeah,
Okay.
young. So, I never had any work experience, like didn't have anything going for me prior to that. So it was like, I kind of came in kind of like, I just need a job and kind of shy and reserved and, my personality wasn't really there for like hiring someone, it seemed. And so I
So
understand
were
that,
you
but
were you like rebellious, or were you just kind of like you just felt like you didn't fit in?
didn't fit in.
So
Didn't
it
fit in.
wasn't
It
like
wasn't a rebel move. I wish I could have been on that path and kind of it made it easy. It would have been easier than
okay,
how it ended up
because it
being.
would seem
But
like you were fighting for something versus just trying to exist.
exactly,
Okay.
yeah. And at that point, I didn't know what I was fighting for because I was just like, I just got to get money. And I still held on to that fashion thing. You know, was like, you know what? Maybe I don't need to make the clothes. Maybe I can just design them and
Mm.
go that way. Go take that route and decided maybe I got really into the idea of screen printing and thought, oh, I'll do that. Like, and I just need to get a job so I can save up and get the equipment to do that. And I kind of knew X, Y, and Z of what I needed to do, but getting the job was the hard thing. That was the hard part, and that was what was continuing to just not come through, not come through. And at this point, I had already started making little crafts and things, and just out of having so much time on my hands and nothing to do with it, and just needing that creative outlet. So
Were you living at home or were you out at that
I
point?
was living at home. I was still through the independent study high
Oh,
school
okay,
stuff
got
at
it.
this point. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was still at home, going through high school, doing the independent study, but I had started making whatever I could, whatever I was interested in. I was doing so many, just everything it seemed like at that point. And, friends would see it and be like, I want that. That's cool. Like, and I started selling to friends just,
What
in
was the
person,
primary medium of it?
all sorts of stuff. I started with jewelry. I started with resin. I started with
Wow.
like just little wall hanging pieces,
Just you're
like
just trying to find an
just
identity.
everything. Yeah, and it was just all whatever I was interested in. I would just go to Michael's and go down the aisles and be like, oh, that's cool, like clay little things,
Yeah.
like all sorts of stuff. And it was all cool. It wasn't all great, but it was fun. And eventually was selling the stuff, and I heard about Etsy at the time, and I'm like, you know what? Why don't I just like put some of this stuff on Etsy and see if I can sell to a wider audience than just my little hometown of people who are interested. And so I did that,
Mhm.
and I made my first sale on Etsy. And
You know
after
what year that
that,
was exactly? Like,
oh man, it must have been maybe like 2015
okay.
or 17. I don't, or
You're younger than I thought you were then.
yeah,
How old are you?
I'm 28. I'll be 29
Okay.
in April.
Okay.
I'm pretty young,
All right.
but I started doing this at a very young age too. So
Yeah,
I've
obviously.
been doing it a while now. It's almost been like 10 years
Wow.
almost.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Etsy first sale was
Etsy first sale was I'll never forget it, and it's almost divine in the way that it kind of synchronized that strange symbolism. It was a yin yang dream catcher,
oh
and the symbolism it'll make sense like farther down the story path, but so I sold that, and it just kind of opened the door of possibility from there. I was like, you know what, I could do that. Like I'll just keep doing that since I can't find a job. Like I
so
made
at that point you'd never had a job like in the
never had a
public
job,
sector.
never, no. So
Oh,
I couldn't, I still wasn't having any luck in that department. And so I'm like, you know what? $30 is better than zero. So I'll just do that. And it was adding up. I was like, this is pretty good. Like, this is at least what somebody would make at a job. And this is cooler than a job would be.
yeah, it's better than sitting at a
However,
desk, but
absolutely, absolutely. And that's never what I wanted to do. So it's like, I can't.
yeah, I understand.
So eventually, though, I did finally get that job that I was, going for, and thought that that was what was going to deem me worthy of society, and like,
Hmm.
telling people, oh yeah, I've got a job. It's not this imaginary thing I do online. And it was at Target. I was,
Oh,
I was at, nothing fancy, but I was at Target for 5 months. 5 months, and what ultimately took me out of it was I requested Halloween off. They wouldn't give it to me, and I quit. I put in my 2 weeks, and I was like, I'm out then. But I wanted to at least be there for at least 6 months, if not longer, so I could take that and it would sound better to the next employer and be like, I was here for 8 months to a year or something. It'd be
yeah,
easier to but look better on paper.
it
But
does.
I couldn't get through the 6 months. The Halloween thing killed it for me. I was like, I'm out.
So
Peace. I'm dipping.
that
Like,
was important to you for just a specific reason or just because?
it's just my favorite. It's
Okay.
always been ever since I was a kid. I love it, and I just couldn't fathom spending Halloween at Target, a
That's
place that
like
I hated. I did not like that job.
so that would be like kind of your version of like some people really love like Easter.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's got the things that are important to
And
them. Their
then
birthdays, Christmas, like,
yeah,
you know,
it's something significant to you just because it is, not for any specific reason, but just because this is what I like and this is where I am and this is important to me. I'll work Easter Sunday, but give me
yeah,
Halloween.
absolutely. Yeah. And
Yeah.
see, and other days weren't as important, but it just happened to be the alignment of that when I was there and working, and they had scheduled me for that night, and I was like, no,
Okay.
that's not happening. Like, so I quit. And after that, though, it kind of opened my eyes to really sinking into what I was doing beforehand. And I just was like, I can't work a job. I'm not designed for that. And I was like, this has to work then. There's no other plan B. There's not another option.
Yeah.
And I went into community college after that.
Oh, that
Um,
was a jump.
well, with not the intention of graduating, I just knew I needed certain skills for what I wanted to do. And so
So you were just
I
kind of doing it a la carte, just picking and choosing what made most
Pretty
sense.
much, yeah.
Okay,
And so
got it.
I wasn't there with like, oh, I'm gonna get my associates or whatever, or
Yeah.
graduate in any major. I
Transfer
just
to a four-year school.
No,
No.
no. I just was like, I know I need these certain skills, and I'm gonna take these skills, and like once I'm done with that, I'll just leave. And
Did your parents have any like that? Like, yeah.
they were happy when I went to
Okay.
community college. They thought, oh yeah, Shannon's gonna get a degree in something. They were trying to force me to pick a major, push me in
Hmm.
that direction, and they already knew. Like they were like, oh, go for fashion, go for fashion. I'm like, I am gonna go for fashion, but I'm not gonna go for fashion in this way, you
Right.
know.
Yeah, yeah.
And fashion classes were ones that I took. I took graphic design, photography, typography was a huge one that like changed so much for me, and a full design spectrum of like everything, which I'm grateful for that class. I didn't want it, but I took it
But
anyways,
you
and
had quality teachers then, it sounds like.
absolutely,
Wow. That's like,
absolutely, and
I mean, not the dog on community college, but it's kind of hit or miss.
absolutely, I had some terrible ones too.
Mm,
And so I was grateful for the good ones I had,
yeah.
as I didn't have great ones in all of the class sections I wanted
But the
for.
ones that counted the most, maybe you did.
Perhaps. There
Okay.
was one in interior design that I would have liked to have been a little bit better, because that
Mm.
was a huge one for me too that I loved, and something I was interested in and kind of what I was doing, but teacher was okay.
Okay. Yeah,
And that happens. It happens.
it
It can't,
happens.
you know.
Not everybody connects with everybody else in that kind of
Absolutely.
environment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I racked up the classes I wanted, and at this point I was still going for fashion. I was still like, I want to make clothes, and I left out at some point in that stretch of time, I did actually finally got my screen printing equipment. I got the whole setup. It was janky, super janky, and
Did you
nothing
buy it on
easy to
like
use.
on Craigslist, or did you just buy the cheapest thing you could find?
I actually bought it secondhand from a friend who was selling it because he was done with using it, and so he had kind of rigged it in some strange ways, and like it was, secondhand. It was used pretty heavy,
It was a
and
struggle, but it worked,
it
right?
worked. It got the job done, and it actually introduced me into like printing my own clothes, which was what
Oh.
Aurvgon was when it
Oh.
first. Before anything, I started with Aurvgon apparel.
And then now that has
It
spun off into its own thing, kind of.
transformed.
Yeah,
Well,
okay.
actually, I still do so
Yeah,
through
Hologon, right?
Polygon.
All
Yeah,
right.
it split because the clothing side and that creative outlet and what the Oregon stuff didn't meld. They didn't diverge in a
Yeah.
way, or they didn't come together that in a way that made sense. And I was just like, this has to be separate. It felt like two sides of myself too. It wasn't
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah.
It like one felt like the light in the dark,
Mm-hmm.
and aura is the light, and hollow is a root for like a call or like a shout. So it's like
Right.
the dark side, and the root gone, like tying them together, and kind of coming back into the symbolism of my first sale being a yin yang dream catcher is like a light and dark, two halves coming together into one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the businesses feel like for myself. Like, and one is dark, the same logo dark, the other one's same logo light,
Okay.
and you can even just look at them and get that same feel for it and what it is, and
Okay.
it feels like it's a full creative fulfillment to be able to express myself in both ways and not just have the one outlet and do both of them together. And
So the initial idea became something else. Did it go away for a little while you focused more on the Oregon side of it?
it did actually. It's
Okay.
been a struggle, and it's weird because it was always supposed to be fashion and clothes, and Oregon at a point just kind of took off and became the star child almost.
So where did that what was the origin of that once the two started to kind of separate and that one's kind of left behind for the time being and you're
Yeah.
now focused in this other direction?
Yeah.
What was the transition there?
I think what it was is the screen printing was getting so it was never something that I fully conquered. I think as an art that I felt confident in doing. I would always mess up prints or waste X amount of the batch that I invested in. It was super expensive to do all the stuff and backbreaking work. My setup was not well. It was all on the floor, so I'd spend a whole day on the floor on my knees, like
Oof.
just over a thing, like just. And I would just be defeated at the end of it and feeling like I only got X amount of shirts out of this or whatever it is. And it just wasn't as fun for me as the other side of what I was doing. And there was more creative possibility that I was just kind of coming up with and sketching out different ideas. And I'm like, I want to do that. And I'd become obsessed and just be like, stay up all night and wake up early the next day and just continue to work. And that became my life.
And it
And
wasn't clothes.
it wasn't clothes, it was something else. And I still had the clothing like desire, and always held on to that. I feel like I've fought tooth and nail to keep that alive, like still to this day.
Oh,
But
sure.
it's not something I feel like I will ever give up. It's just
Yeah. And then once that became the priority and here you are, what was like the seminal moment, like this is the product, this is the design, this is the really bespoke thing that became your, I guess, artistic identity of that part? What was it?
which part
The Oregon, right when it took over, like what was the thing that you made and you were like, oh my God, this is gonna work?
it was always the Dreamers. That seemed to be the number one thing that everyone loved. What I loved, like the infinite possibility of a circle and like all of the different things that you can do with that and like ways that you can transform that into being different whatever it is that you want, and just learning different weaves and different styles of how to do something. And it wasn't even something that existed. Almost it seemed like just what I could make up or think of, which I loved too. There wasn't a medium for some of these things, so it was exciting to see something that I've never seen before. And
That started around like what year you think, roughly?
I want to say, so, and this is great. I have a friend who made me a plaque when I first started, and she dated it. And I'm so
Oh,
grateful she did. It's 2014. And I'll always, because I forget through time,
yeah, of
and
course.
I always forget like how much time has gone by and what, it's crazy. But I'm so grateful she added the date on there because that was kind of the first beginnings, like birth of the brand. And
And you didn't even know at the time. It was just like that's just what's happening, and then it became something like
oh,
the
absolutely.
beginning part ends up in one side, and then this new thing is what ends up kind of taking off.
Yeah, it was never planned to be that way. It was always supposed to be the clothes.
And then that was secondary.
And it was secondary, and it's still like I still have so much love for it, and it's hard to like admit that sometimes, like that it is secondary, but it is. And not to diminish one or the other. And it's like I love them both equally. It's always been process of finding the balance between the two, and not giving too much to one side, and being able to balance it, but also just kind of going with the flow of what feels right, and not demanding that one needs more attention than the other if it's not flowing. Like it's
Yeah,
nothing good happens out of that.
you're not necessarily leaving anything behind by not putting like an entire focus on it. And I have not anywhere near the scale that you have, but it's been almost a year. Like I actually came up with a line of t-shirts and I put them in my shop, and I haven't promoted them or really done anything with them. They're there, they exist, they don't really sell, but it's not my priority. It was something that I invested in, and I'm like, I'm really proud of how these turned out and I
Yeah,
really like them.
yeah.
But they're there
Mhm.
for consumption if someone wants them. But if they sit for a while, I'm okay with it because I'm not ready at this moment to do much beyond them just existing where they are and they're happy there.
Right, exactly. And that's perfect. That's fine. That's,
Yeah.
as long as you're happy with what you produced, I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah. And, you you start this completely separate thing of the dreamers, and that's where you end up, and that's there's so much that I have seen over the years that you've done with that I
Yeah.
didn't see with other people, because there are other people obviously that make stuff that's like, in at least from a aesthetic shape point, like
Right.
it's very similar.
Yeah, yeah.
But there's not much as far as variety goes.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think that's what I loved about it. It's not a it's not a category that seems super entirely saturated to something that I'm gonna lose interest in, or I'm gonna see that same thing, and it's almost like what other new ideas are there? I feel like there's a multitude of new ideas I come up with all the time that I've never seen, and I don't see again, and that's what I love too. It's like, it's hard to replicate this stuff. I could barely do it the first time I did it. It's for me to even make the same thing twice as hard. So it's like to see that again, it's like, slim to none, like a chance of happening, which I love. And I think that is also what keeps me interested in continuing to make them, and like build the complexity, and just continue to go down the rabbit hole pretty much of like what else can be done, like what else can I add to this, like how crazy can it get.
Yeah.
And I like that. That fuels me, like, so.
You can even take something that you thought, like, if you put it out there and you thought it was intricate, like say a while ago, and then you keep expanding and you keep growing your craft and your skill set, and then you go back and you're like, I really like this design that I made back then, but I can tweak it in some ways
Oh,
that'll make it so much
absolutely.
better.
Absolutely. I do that all the time, and it's I always call it like complexity creates complexity, and it's true. Like you kind of build on what it is. It's like it is feels like a big spiral or a rabbit hole that you kind of just go down, and you can continue to plunge, or you could stay in one place. And I feel like there's no point in staying in one place. It's boring. Why would
No,
you do that?
and you don't prioritize doing the same thing twice. Like you don't try to replicate your own stuff. Like if you make something that someone really, say that you put it out and they grab it immediately and someone
Yeah.
missed out and
Yeah.
they're like, can you remake that? Do you? I don't know.
Very rarely. I never make the same piece twice, especially something that's intricate. Like, sure, maybe I'll do a small batch of things that are kind of all the same, but it's smaller pieces.
Yeah.
And my big hitting pieces, I never make again. And
Mm.
it's almost, like I said, it's almost hard to replicate anything like that. It would never be the same, even if I tried.
Yeah.
Sure, it would look similar, but it would never be the same piece, and it's not going to have the same energy as the original. It's not going to have the same, like, what is it, like, spark of like interest as when I was fully like, wow, this is so cool, like it's coming together. And like when you make the same thing again, it doesn't have that same energy behind it and that same life.
Right.
And I think that these things hold that energy, and you can feel it. And
Yeah.
I like to keep it new and fresh all the time. And I think that's what people love about me too. You're not going to continue to see the same thing. But
Yeah, there's some truth in that, and I don't know how far that goes because I don't know where your stance is on like custom work. But for me, that's I say other reasons just to make it simple for me to explain to people why I don't do custom work. There are a few facets to it, but the main one is I don't like it. I don't enjoy it personally. I like the fact that people would love me to make them something that is completely bespoke. But when I put energy into something that wasn't originally sparked in my own psyche, like if someone says, I want you to make something that's like this, uh, it's hard for me to get motivated to do it because it
yeah,
wasn't the first, it didn't originate in my head, and I wasn't like I want to jump up and go do this. Like there are moments where I'm at home in the middle of the night and I think of a fun design or something that I really want to do or something I'm interested in, and I'm like, man, I wish I was at the shop right now. Like, I wish I could just do this real quick. I can't wait to get up in the morning and make this. But I've never felt that way about something that was completely bespoke, like from the ground up, start to finish.
right. And I agree to that. And I typically don't take custom work for that exact reason. And it doesn't. Sometimes through past, it hasn't always come out like super great on my. It's not something I'm proud of, and it's not even something that the person when they saw the pictures or saw what it was, they weren't even exactly thrilled either because it
Yeah.
wasn't. It just didn't have that same, like you just described. It wasn't something that I was fully invested in myself. So it was hard to, make that just come out of, translate their idea into something that I think they want to see. It's kind of, it takes away from the creativity of like, a lot of the time I think I know what I want to see, but it'll take a totally different turn and direction and come out even with better
Oh, I do
because
that all the time.
yeah,
All the
so it's
time.
hard to plan something start to finish and be like, this is it, like, and I think it's better that way. It kind of creates like more room for, transformation and
Yeah, some of my best and most popular things I've ever made were mistakes.
absolutely, me too.
They were
Yeah.
it was something where I set off in this direction. I'm like, this is gonna be awesome. And then
Yeah.
I get in it and I'm like, this sucks. And then
Yeah.
I just completely take it in a different direction. I'm like, now it's good, but it's
Yeah.
not at all what I thought
Yeah.
I was gonna do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've found myself at those, pivot points in custom work orders where it's like I'll have an idea, something will spark me, and I'll be like, wow, this could be really cool if I did that, but that's not what the person wanted.
Yeah.
It's not within their budget, like X, Y, and Z reasons why not to do that thing. However, it's still in my mind of like that could be really cool, but I don't know, like that's not what I've been hired for. So
Hmm.
it's that's that for me. I try and steer away from customs. However, I will do customs for people, for repeat customers sometimes, or people I know.
You vet the
um
people, like it's
yeah,
yeah.
and I kind of know their energy, and it seems to work out a little bit better that way, but I don't often do it. It's really rare that I'll accept or agree to doing that because my time is spread so thin too. I would rather spend the time doing anything else
Yeah.
than a custom piece that maybe might not be my something that I feel fully invested in or inspired by.
Yeah, and for me, like I don't do furniture anymore. I say that, but I don't make furniture anymore. I'm completely invested in what I do and what you see online. But um, a celebrity guy that I was connected to through another celebrity friend told he connected us together, and he was like, "Would you be willing to, I'll give him your contact information if you're willing to like make this piece of furniture for him." And this was like 2016, something like that, and he wanted a special like studio console table to go in his music production studio. And I was like, at first it was like, okay, I'm a fan of this guy, so of course I'm going to see if I can take the job. And then I was started working with him, and we were very much aligned on the same page. I had a background in music and some, not anywhere near him, but I had a background in music and understood what he was looking for. And so I'm like, you know what, it's someone who's famous, and this is cool, so I'll do it for him this one time. I'll make him this one-off piece because he's super easy to work with, and I
Mhm.
understand everything about it, even though I don't really do this anymore. And it'll give me an opportunity to say I did. And so I did that, and then I get a random text from the guy that I made the desk for, uh, 2 summers ago, and he said, "Hey, I sold that because I had to move my studio.
Mm.
So I sold it, but I want another one, and I wanted exactly like that one with some just very minor
Mhm.
changes." But I was like, you know what? Like, okay, I will do it for you
Mhm.
just because like you. the first experience was good enough, and I know you're going to be happy with it because it's been like 5 years, and you came back and you're like, I need another one,
Right.
and I still have the drawings, and I still remember how to do it, and it's like that is like that's an exception I made because I was like, it makes sense like to do it this way, but when you get into for me, I get into a dangerous spot when it's something that someone's like, I want you to make something that is like this or shaped like this or whatever. When you start that conversation at that point, to me, ethically, it limits what I can do with anything that surrounds that design from that point
Mm.
forward. Because someone says, make me like, well, I'll try to pick something that I've never done. Like, make me a shelf that's shaped like a frog.
Mm.
Eh, well, what if I had already started at some point because I have a million different designs that I have saved unfinished at one time? Maybe 3 months earlier, I had started making a frog and I'd never finished it, and I was in line to at some point I'm going to finish this and I'm going to do it. Then at that point, if I ever release a frog thing, if I take that job, then that person's going to be like, you used my idea and now you're reproducing it
Oh,
and making money off of it.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's why I don't, that's the other big reason why I think me entertaining that stuff is risky, because
Mhm.
I can't just come out and, or if I came out and say, you know what, I've already been working on one of those, wait a few months, and I just be like, no, he just took my idea and ran with it. So
Right.
when someone says, can I talk to you about it? It's like, I have to close the discussion because it's like, I don't do custom work, and um, I don't want to necessarily, step on your toes.
Absolutely. I had a similar scenario actually happen last what month are we in? Last month, yeah. Someone made a super popular design custom piece for someone who I'd been working with, or who's been a customer of mine for years. And she I made the piece and it turned out great. It was what she wanted. She was super happy with it. And then after that, I got a ton of emails requesting the same design.
Mm.
And it just didn't feel right. It was sentimental and special for that person, and it didn't feel right to recreate that and then put that out there as this is another now a piece that I made for a bunch of other people, and it's like it was her idea, it was what she wanted. Like it felt inauthentic to a degree of like this is what I made for you, and now I'm making it for all these other people, the same thing that everyone wants, and
It limits your
it's
scope in a way.
yeah,
And
definitely.
is it that's kind of where you get like, is it at that point, is it healthy for you? Is it healthy for them?
Yeah, right,
And do you,
right.
most of the time the answer is
No,
no.
no, no. So I'm careful with it. I'm very it's very circumstantial. Depends on the scenario. Depends on the person. Depends on the idea. All of the above. There's a lot of factors, but
Yeah,
for the most part, it's no. And I have it everywhere too. It's like no customs. It's on my website. Like I make certain pieces. Like try and get those pieces. Like and typically the ideas and things I make are more popular anyway. So it's like I'll stick to that. Like let me do the heavy work of figuring out the thing. Like
yeah,
and
that's
yeah.
yeah. I would like to think that most people would be okay with that, like knowing like, I don't necessarily have this in like, it is kind of a fear, I guess, sometimes if someone posts something that's like, oh, they made this for me custom, and then another customer sees like, why'd you do it for them and not for me?
Yeah, that
But
too. Yeah.
it's a risk, but it's not necessarily, you shouldn't have to justify it.
I've never had anyone come after me for feeling jealous about it or.
Good,
So I'm
good,
thankfully it's
good.
been good, but I know what you mean. It's like it's almost like picking favorites, but there's a lot of factors and reasons why it works that way, and for the most part, I think people have been pretty kind and understanding too.
Yeah, yeah. For the most part, everybody's good. You just you find a crabby person every now and then in every
Every once in a
situation.
while, it's okay.
Yeah,
They're out there.
they're
You
out
can't take it
there.
personal.
Yeah, you gotta kind of let stuff roll off you at some
Yeah,
point in time.
you get better at it too.
Yeah, I've kind of reached the point to where 99.8% of the time I'm like, I really don't care about anything
Oh,
anymore, right?
okay.
Like any commentary or whatever,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
engage with it. I just ignore it. I don't
Oh,
delete
it's the
it.
same. Yeah.
I'll leave it there, but I'm not gonna engage with it either.
Yeah, yeah, it's like it's almost like ammo. They want you to take the bait and then like, go after and
Yeah, there are some people that specifically, and I know people like this who go out and they're like, I want to just wake up today and I want to get in a fight.
exactly, yeah.
And then some
Yeah.
people don't, and I think it's way healthier if you are the not person of that.
100%. 100%. And not to feed the fire. It's good. Always good.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's dangerous because they're being defensive at some point when you're an artist. It becomes toxic to not just you, but the people that are paying attention to
Oh,
you.
absolutely, absolutely.
And when you have people paying attention to you, as much as you don't want to, you do have to kind of you have to be aware of what you're talking and what you're saying
Oh
and
yeah,
the way that you say it.
yeah, yeah.
It's just part of life at that point.
Yeah, and I'm not a part. I don't want to feed into any negativity. It's just not. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't
No,
feel good. So,
no, no. You do way better as a person if you don't flaunt that and put it all out there all the time.
oh yeah,
If you don't become known for the person who lashes out in any way.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
I don't do well with those people at all.
No, me neither. I don't. I just disconnect from it. I've gotten really good at that. If anything, so.
Yeah. Well, side note, I have to ask, but obviously the people who listen to the audio portion won't be able to see this. But when did you start getting your tattoos? At what age?
Oh man, I got my first one when I was 16 and I had to hide it from my parents until I was 18. And
Ah,
I actually got a few more after that. So I got my first one and I just kept getting some more and they were all on my back and I was like I can just hide them here and like just would wear shirts with sleeves that, weren't showing my shoulders and stuff
okay, I
and
see.
did that. Finally came out of the closet necessarily with tattoos and at
Oh,
18 and I was like, hey, you know what, I have these and just so you know I'm gonna get visible ones now, kind of letting them
I see.
know like this is what it is. And they were not happy, but and always asked me like, where are you gonna stop, are you gonna stop at your elbows, like I hope you don't go past your elbows and you can't get a job and all this stuff. And didn't I told them to. I was like, yeah, I won't go past my elbows, and told them all whatever they wanted to hear, and just did what I wanted anyways. And it ended up being I am mostly, covered now. I have not a lot of skin left, which is good. I mean, that's kind of what I wanted too. I would grow up listening to all these like bands that were covered in tattoos, and I would think, wow, that's so cool. Like I could never do that. I could never have that. Like and like here I am now and I'm not even 30 and I'm almost done with my body. I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
I have that.
You
Like
haven't done anything on the face yet.
I'm not going to do anything
Okay.
on my face. That's
So
a no
that's
spot.
okay.
That's where I'll cut the
Okay.
limit there, but
Yeah. Palms, top of the hand. That's cool. I know
yeah.
for a lot of people that's a no-no.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I understand, it's a stigma. I get a lot of looks. I get a lot of judgment. I deal with a lot, and even going places in the world, I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable.
Oh yeah.
But it's not gonna stop me from doing
Of
and
course
being
not.
who I am and doing what I want to do. And
Yeah,
so
it's part of your identity for sure. Like that's
yeah,
the most standout feature, other than like just the super strong red hair.
yeah, yeah.
It's it's the
You can
tattoos.
find me in a crowd easy.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm always told that,
yeah,
but it really is who I am, and they're for me. And people always wonder like, oh, you're just doing that like for something, or what do they mean? And a lot of it is just a decoration of. I just feel like a fully decorated person in my whole life, like
yeah,
my in a full life sense, and like. When I looked in the mirror before and getting them, and every time I get to add a piece, I feel a little closer to myself and what I am. And
yeah,
so I feel like I'm kind of every new piece is like revealing a new layer of my true authentic person. And I feel more comfortable. I feel more in my own skin than ever before without having them. So I'm happy to have them. I'm also really grateful to be, it sounds early to be almost covered, but I'm grateful to have more time that I get to spend with them in life versus not.
yeah, yeah,
People always say, wait till you're this age and get your whatever done. And it's like, no, I want to have more of my life. And, tomorrow's never guaranteed.
yeah.
I don't want to count on, 5 years from now coming around and then I get it.
Or think about what it's gonna look like when it's wrinkled.
Yeah, or that. I don't care. I think they look cool,
Yeah,
you know?
so cool. I mean, I've got like a this is I kind of took the opposite approach to that in a way. I did get my first tattoo when I was 18 on my ankle, and then I got a couple more on my ankle. I was
Okay.
like, whatever, that's whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and I, you say bands, and this is why I think I connect here. Um, the reason, so my entire left arm is a sleeve, and it's just floral and
It's
paisley.
beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's my artist is
I really like
awesome.
it. I like the style.
Yeah, her name is Aubrey Claire. She works out of Empyrean Tattoo in Sandy Springs, Georgia, if anybody's interested. But
Awesome.
she does awesome work. And uh, the reason I got a sleeve, this is gonna sound so stupid to you probably.
Maybe not. I don't know.
I don't know if you ever listened. Well, you would probably know who this is anyway. But if you were ever in the subculture of like the early 2000s emo
Oh, yeah.
movement,
Yes.
you seem like the type.
Yes.
Because I was too.
Definitely.
I was the girl jeans and the
Yep.
sideways studded belt
Oh,
and the
yeah.
tight t-shirts. That was me when I was that age. That was what I like for some reason aspired to be that in my early 20s. But the reason that I gravitated to that and I got my sleeve was because when I was in high school, there was an album and I remember where I was standing. I was in a Target
Huh.
oddly enough, in like probably 2000 whatever, early like 2001, 2, whenever this was, maybe even 3. Um, and there was this album that was sitting on the CD rack, and it was MTV Unplugged,
Hmm.
Dashboard Confessional.
Nice.
And the cover of that album is Chris Carrabba, the lead frontman of Dashboard Confessional, with his big ass Gibson guitar, a big acoustic guitar, and his sleeve exposed.
Mm.
Now he had color on his sleeve, and I didn't want color, but that was the reason why I decided at some point in life I'm going to have just one arm completely sleeved,
Nice.
and it's gonna like completely sleeve, like nothing, like as minimal skin showing as I can without with still looking decorative. I didn't want to
Yeah.
black out or anything,
Right, right.
but
Yeah.
it was that album cover, and I was like, one day that's gonna be me. And I was like, I'm gonna get at some point I'm gonna have a lip ring, and at some point I'm gonna have a sleeve. I never got the lip ring, and I'm actually thankful I didn't do that.
Yeah.
But that was completely counterintuitive to the culture I grew up in, which is very conservative Southern Baptist. Which,
Yeah.
yeah, it was.
Yeah.
My parents would have lost their minds
Oh
probably if
yeah.
I'd showed up with a sleeve at that age, which for good reason I think actually, but
Yeah.
because that would have been a very hasty decision. But
Yes.
I waited until I was 32.
Yeah.
I got my sleeve when I was 32,
Nice.
and I'm happy that I waited that long to do it. And it, there's no meaning behind it. It's
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
well, I say there's no meaning, but what I literally told my artist was, I was like, I want paisley and I want floral, but don't put any roses on me because I don't
Mm.
like roses. And that's what she came up with. As she went through, I did get a maple leaf for my dad for the carpentry because he works with a lot of maple, and I got
Right.
a fern leaf for my mother,
Oh
and
yeah.
that kind
There's
of
some
stuff.
meaning laced in there.
There's some meaning shoved through there, but if
Yeah.
someone's like, what does your sleeve symbolize? Nothing.
Absolutely.
It's just art.
Yeah.
Like that's what I
Yeah.
wanted. It's art, and it seems like that's what
Yeah.
your thing
Yeah.
is, art.
Yeah. I saw a great meme. It was something like, why get a meaningful tattoo when you could get a cool tattoo? And it just hit home to me. And I was like, yeah, that's the same.
That's
Like,
that's your entire
me too.
existence at
Yeah.
this point.
I started with the meaning. I mean, yeah, I have some meaning ones, but for the most part, it's like I was kind of, I was also hanging out with a lot of tattoo artists and spent a lot of time in tattoo shops and just were like those were the friends and people I kind of gravitated towards because they were also kind of outcasts. So
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I learned about what good tattoos were, how to place them, and what to do, like how to make something flow. And so I'm
yeah.
so grateful for that because beforehand, and I, did make a lot of, it was almost like a trail of destruction. It's good you waited because this arm is a complete cover up now at this point because all of these decisions were early on, and
I
not
see.
fully baked, not fully developed as my person or someone who's understanding how to place tattoos or how to get good ones.
Yeah,
And so, you have to pay for those mistakes one way or another, either with living with it or trying to go back and correct it. And so, had to go through and correct some major, major mistakes, like all the first ones on my back too, all done in someone's kitchen,
oh,
nothing good.
yeah.
And the art showed it wasn't good. So I, just recently, actually, a couple weeks ago, finished this piece I've been working on for years. It's this giant Japanese-style dragon cover up, stretching from my shoulders all the way down to the backs of my thighs, like
Oh,
huge
all the
piece.
wow,
It's giant. It
wow.
covers the whole space, but it kind of had to cover the work that was there. So I had to go dark and saturated, and it was painful and, you know, long and all of the above. And, it didn't have to be that way if I started with maybe a more developed idea or a different place in my life where I wasn't just putting on whatever I could for the sake of getting tattoos.
Yeah,
So, and I always urge people to get good work versus just getting work.
yeah.
And
Don't do it on spring break.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
like that was kind of my consensus about it. Is like, if I still want this thing and I'm 32, I'm always gonna want this.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely. Yeah.
if I saw this at like 16, 17 years old and I said I want that, and then here we are, I'm in my 30s and I'm like, wow, I really want, then I need to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that, I think that's a good indicator that something should probably exist on your body.
Yeah, yeah. And it takes some time to figure it out sometimes. You'd kind of grow and like, you mature as a person. So you kind of figure it out and come up with better ideas and a better vision and, what you would want to identify with and not just whatever it is for the sake of, oh, this is cool. I'm just going to get this and not know who's doing it, not know their style of art or whatever, and end up with this piece that later in life you'll have to just accept for what it is or covered a lot of mine now at this point. So
Well, let's play a game then. I'm going to guess how long you can sit before you tap out,
okay.
and you're going to guess how long I can sit before I tap out.
Okay.
because for anyone who doesn't know, who's never had a large tattoo done, there is a certain point for most people where they're like, I can't mentally handle this anymore. Even the people that say it doesn't hurt, a lot of times there's a tap out point.
Right.
You do have one, I assume.
Yes. Yes. I think well, I don't
Maybe.
know,
Yeah.
maybe more or
There's
less.
some,
I've heard
some
of some stories where the person just kept going. I'm like,
yeah.
okay,
I'm
I
gonna
guess
say,
so.
I'm gonna make an assumption. I'm gonna say that your tap out point is 8 hours.
Oh no, much
Damn
less,
it.
much less. I wish I was that tough. I'm not.
Okay, how long do you go?
I go like 5 hours tops and I'm done.
Okay.
And that's it also depends on the style of work. I've noticed with the heavy saturation black over already done pieces,
Mhm.
it hurts more because there's scar tissue.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a lot of heavy, like the needle sizes they're using are bigger. It's there's just like kind of digging in there, and it sucks. There's no
I do
easy
better
way.
with shading than I do line work.
Absolutely, I agree to that. And for me, shading a new piece on
Yeah,
fresh skin is
fresh.
always better than
Yeah.
going over skin that's already been tattooed. I find that to be much worse,
Yeah, definitely.
and don't recommend
Yeah.
doing that. But
So what do you think mine is?
okay, let's say I'm gonna say, hmm, hmm. And your arm is the biggest piece you have?
The biggest one. It goes all the way up.
Okay. I'm gonna guess,
My arm has 32 hours in it.
okay. I'm gonna guess 7?
4.5.
4.5. Okay.
I'm less than you.
Okay.
I can go.
Interesting.
I did 5 once, and I was like mentally just ready to cry. Like,
Yeah,
not like
yeah.
just not like in pain, but just like mentally, like it was taking over my
I-
body, and I was like, I can't go.
I get it. That's where I was at the 5 mark, and I was just like, I can't do it anymore. Like, and it was fine. I'd been sitting there for 5 hours. You get a lot of work done in 5 hours,
You
but
can.
there's no point in it becoming a torturous thing, and
No,
like,
not for me.
kind of.
Some people like that. I can't do it.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's not for me either. I try and it's spiritual for me, and I don't want to sit there and when it becomes to feel like a torturous thing or
Yeah.
feel like I'm like leaving my body because the pain is so bad. It's time to be done.
It's time to back up.
That's yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Well,
yeah,
I think we're at an interesting crossroads. We went in a lot of directions that I
Yeah.
didn't know we were going to go, but I think we're in a pretty good spot here.
yeah, yeah.
So-
Touched on a lot of bases for sure.
Yeah.
There's always a lot to talk about.
Yeah. So I am going to just go ahead and transition this into I'm going to ask you if what question that you might have for me on that perspective before we.
Yeah, perspective on just anything, right? I can ask you
Yes,
any
you can
question.
ask me anything.
I'm entirely curious to ask you about your laser setups. Actually, I do laser work myself, and
Yes, you do.
my machine is nowhere near as intense and intricate as yours. And you're kind of an inspiration. You are an inspiration to me in that regard. Of like, wow, this is really cool. I would love to figure out one day how to work on this scale and to create bigger and more intricate pieces. And even with just like the power that is required for you to run these machines.
that's-
It trips me out. I would have no idea where you even begin a venture like that or how you make your own custom machines, right?
In a way, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay. Well, basically, how powerful is your machine?
50 watt?
It's a 50.
It's a
Okay.
50 watt.
Okay, so I started with a 50.
Okay.
And the first 50 that I got, that was a stretch for me. And this, I don't even remember what year it was, like early 2015, like 2014, something like that. I decided I wanted one to go into my work. I didn't know anything about anything. I always thought like CAD design was cheating. Like I thought it wasn't as good as doing stuff by hand. Which I'm sure you can empathize with to a certain point. Anyone who's done something by hand is like, it takes it away.
Yeah.
Like it takes away the craft.
Yeah.
But once you get into it, you're like, absolutely, it does not. You can't survive carving stuff by hand
No.
anymore. You can't do it. It's
Definitely not.
No one will pay for that. And if they do, you've got to be really, really established to make that happen.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like really established.
Yeah.
So that was the first time I ever took out any sort of loan for my business. It was a big risk because I didn't have much at all at that point. I didn't have like much capital. I didn't have much saved. So if this didn't work out, it would probably it would set me back super far in the progress I'd made at that point. But I bought a 50 watt. I bought it on eBay.
Nice.
I took out a PayPal loan because they actually said they would loan me money, and it was thousands of dollars, not like crazy. I think it was like $3,500 or $4,000 back then, something like
Okay.
that. Which is a lot for me because I had been living below the poverty line for quite a while at
Right.
that point, and I was like, oh, I gotta try, I gotta do something. So I got that one, and that was a nightmare. I still have it though,
Nice.
but for all the faults that it had and for all of the nightmare of an existence, like there was a time after I first got it that I stepped away from it for like 4 months because it was just numbing my brain. Like I couldn't handle it anymore. Like stuff on it was breaking and I didn't understand why, and like why
Yeah.
is it not working like it's
Mm.
supposed to, and how do vectors, like what is a vector? I don't know. I was just trying to do the bare minimum to try to figure this thing out. I didn't understand it enough to do that. But um, I eventually forced myself, like staying up many late nights to learn how these things work. And I'm not that person. I am not that person. I'm a very literal person. I'm a very investigative, want to learn everything person. And I'm not saying this lightly, I can literally disassemble an entire car and put it back together. That the laser thing is a completely different animal and something that I don't, that I, at that point, I didn't understand at all. And there's still a lot of mystery to it, but overall, that machine and its shortfalls and the horrible build quality that it was um, taught me a lot, and for the better. It was a really struggling, horrible, just awful learning experience. But once I got through it, I'm like, I can buy any laser I want because I can fix this shit when it breaks now.
Nice.
Because I did so many things. I heavily modified my 50 watt. It's like a 60 now. The tube like sticks out of the machine, and I had to build a
Okay.
case for it. And I still use it to this day to do small stuff. It's in my garage at my house, and I use it to do everything from my like smaller detail work on my art pieces. And I even go as far as like, if because I work on cars to free my mind. That's what I do. Like I'm not like modifying necessarily, but just like maintaining cars. Like
Yeah.
I change my own oil and do my own transmission fluid and change my own parts and whatever. Like I've been
Mhm.
doing that since I was 14 years old. That's like what I do to escape when I need to get away
Yeah.
from stuff. Um, but like if I need a new gasket to go between a part and the engine or something, then I will design it in CAD and I'll cut it out on my little laser in my garage, my
Oh,
original one I
nice.
still bought. Stuff like that. Like it's super useful for me
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. But then when I really wanted to get into it, I didn't step up to a bigger laser. I actually bought a full blown CNC um, that I did have custom built. It actually in Canada and had to ship it down. That was the biggest risk I'd ever taken financially in my business at that point. That
Mm.
was the end of 2018. Um, in for a CNC is essentially the same thing as a laser. Obviously, it just has a spinning blade instead of a laser, so it's
Yeah.
carving the wood. And I used that extensively for about 2 years. Um, and it makes such a mess and it's so loud. Like this is a full on, full size, full scale machine. It does full 4 foot by 8 foot pieces of
Oh, wow.
plywood.
Wow.
Um, Super noisy, super dusty, super honestly annoying. Um, but then I actually kind of retired. I still have that machine, but it's actually disassembled, and I use
Mm.
it for a table now, which is not the proper
Okay.
use because it cost me like 12 grand,
Yeah, it's an
and
expensive table.
it's in a very expensive table. But I'm like, it's one of those things like it's still a part of my shop, but it's still part of my if I sell it, then I have to pay taxes on it because I'm a business.
Yeah.
So I better just hold on to it. It still works. I just don't
Yeah.
use it right now. Maybe
Yeah.
at some point I will, but um, then in 2020 I had the bright idea. Is like, I'm gonna get a laser that'll blow through anything. Like I'm gonna go big. So I had one built by a company. I'm not gonna name the company. They're in California though, because I'm not super happy with this one.
Mm.
But they I had them build a laser for me that was spec'd beyond what they usually would do.
Mm.
The machine I bought is called a hybrid. It'll cut metal as long as you put an oxygen tank on it, and it'll also cut wood and fibrous things, acrylic, whatever. Just like any other laser, but it has the ability to technically cut metal, which I don't use it for, so I kind of wasted that.
Mm.
But um, it originally topped out at 180 watt, which is pretty heavy duty, and they had this new tube and this new system, and they're like, this one does 300 watts,
Oh,
and I'm
wow.
like, that's what I need.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I needed that, but I'm like, that's what I need.
Yeah.
So I spent like an extra $5,000 on it to
Oh,
get a
geez.
300 watt tube, which makes no sense. but I was like, it's a business expense. I did take out a loan to do it. I'm not like out here rich with cash throwing it around at stuff.
Yeah.
Like I took out a loan and I was like, I'm going to be able to pay this thing off even if it's overkill. Like if it's overkill at some point, if this is going to help me so much that I'm going to be able to pay it off, like that was what I told myself. Uh, and it was overkill.
Mm.
That machine was horribly overkill. It would blow through like 2 inch thick wood almost. Like it was so much more than I ever
Oh,
needed.
wow.
Like it was insane. Um, and then that tube, that super expensive tube and system in it, it actually broke.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so that
Devastating.
devastating. Like I was just beside, like I was sick. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
for to its credit, that machine did me so much good. I did pay it off. It did everything I needed it to do. It was way too much, way more than I needed, and I was able to do things that helped me grow as a creator, as a maker. Um, that if it were a lesser machine, I still would have been able to do. I just went way too far. Um, but I still have it. I ended up downgrading the tube. Now it's a 150, so
Yeah.
it's half.
Yeah.
Because that's fine. That's plenty. That's all I
Yeah.
need. Because if I pop another tube, I don't want to spend 5 grand on replacing it. I had to replace all the power supplies and everything because they were geared up for something way bigger.
Yeah.
So yeah, the first laser experience and the ins and the outs of that helped me be able to build that machine into something that was way more practical for me at a huge expense of it breaking, but that's fine. And then actually about a year ago, I decided that I was happy enough with my new 150-watt machine that I had downgraded, that I actually purchased another one. I actually purchased it the day before Anne Marie and I got married.
Oh, nice.
That was I was like, we're gonna do this. Like we're out of town.
Yeah.
We got married in Phoenix, and
Very cool.
we were just sitting by the pool, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, click, let's do
Yeah.
this.
It's kind of sentimental. Like,
Yeah,
it's got some meaning behind it. Yeah.
yeah, some meaning behind it. And then I had it. It was delivered like 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
I've had to do a couple things to it too. Like here's the thing: if you don't know what you're doing, if you're not mechanically inclined, like this is my advice. Are you looking for advice on this?
I am
Okay.
100%. Yes.
If you're mechanically inclined and you understand electronics to a certain degree and you're willing to learn how this stuff actually works, like how the motion, how the drivers, all that
Hmm.
stuff work, then you'd be fine with buying a cheaper machine, even if it's a 50 watt like I did, and if you're willing to learn about it. And it will serve you well as long as you're always expecting that something's going to break at some point until you work all the bugs out of it. Because the first one I got, it hasn't given me a single problem in like
Oh, wow.
5 years.
Oh, nice.
Ever since I finally like upgraded everything as I went, and it
Yeah.
wasn't super expensive. I don't have a lot invested in that machine. It's more of like learning how to adjust things properly and whatever. It's
Hmm.
not too complicated.
Yeah.
If you really want to learn. If that kind of stuff frustrates you, then you need to go out and buy something that's going to be very expensive. Um, uh, because you get things like customer support and you get technicians that you can call and you can go on a video call, like a Zoom call with someone at their office if they're based in the United States. Usually, like if the laser is manufactured here and the company exists here, you'll have a much better time. But the point of entry, the cost of entry, the pay to play is way higher,
Oh,
like
absolutely.
way higher. Like
Oh, yeah.
if you buy an imported machine, you're going to pay like a third that you would pay for one that was made in the States or made in Canada.
Yeah.
That's just how it is because you do get the benefits of customer service and tech support and all of that. But if you
Yeah.
buy a cheaper machine, like I did to start off with, you sacrifice all of that because you're on your own.
Absolutely.
You're not getting anything. But if you're looking to if what you're looking to do is use like 1/4 inch plywood, like I assume that's a lot of what you use,
Yeah. Nothing too.
1/4 inch, 1/8 inch,
Yeah.
stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Nothing too thick.
Yeah, if you want to be able to run something, you can stay 100 watts or less if you want to go full commercial with it,
Okay.
and you'll be 100% fine.
Yeah.
It'll do everything you need it to do. Um, it's only when you want to start blowing through like 1/2 inch thick stuff and 3/4 inch thick stuff.
Yeah.
And the other thing that a lot of people don't know is that the higher up you go in power, the more you lose detail.
Yes.
The laser spot gets bigger as you increase the power of the tube. So you're going to get more detail work as far as like if you want to engrave something intricate or cut things that are more intricate, you'll get a much better um, level of detail out of a 50-watt machine than you will a 150-watt machine.
That's good to know too.
Yeah.
Very good to
So
know.
if you're very detail centric, you need to stick with lower power machines that will still cut through whatever you're trying to cut through.
Absolutely.
For most people, the happy medium, I think, is somewhere between 70 to 100 watts.
Okay.
And then you're also keeping within being able to use regular household 120 power like we use for
Yes.
everything else.
Yes.
The machines that I bought, since they're higher power, they're in the 150 range, and then the big one that was 300, now 150.
Yeah.
They run on commercial power. They run on 220.
Yeah.
You've got to have dedicated 220 outlets in most houses. You only have those in like your kitchen that powers your oven and your stove, and you have them maybe in your laundry room to power your dryer. Outside of that, most houses don't have those in North
Yeah.
America. In every other country, for some reason, every other, you know, nation, they use 220 as the standard. For some reason, we don't do that in North America. Don't know why, but you need the commercial power, so that's something that you got to put in there, and you've also got to know like if you're cutting stuff faster because you buy a more powerful machine, you're cutting stuff faster, you're making more smoke. Depending on where you live, that might be a problem.
Yes.
If your neighbors like to have their windows open and you can spit and hit their house from where you stand, they're probably not going to appreciate smoke pumping out
Yeah.
towards their home.
Yeah, definitely not.
Which is why I do have my small one in my residential neighborhood. 50 watts is fine for that. No one's ever said anything to me about that. It doesn't create much at all. It creates much less than like a fireplace would in most situations, but you're not piping it out through a chimney. You're piping it probably out a window.
Yeah.
So it's a different experience. But like the big commercial machines I have at my actual shop, they make a pretty good cloud.
Okay.
Not as much as the wood burning stove, the fireplace that we heat the shop with, not to that point at all. But if someone was doing something like that in a neighborhood, I'd probably be annoyed.
Absolutely, I could understand that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I know
so
I would be.
yeah, it's just you're if you're running a 50-watt now and you just need more like bed surface, like you want to be able to put a bigger
Yes.
piece of material on it, which I assume is probably
Yes,
what you
that
want.
is absolutely what I'm always looking to do.
Yeah, a 50-watt probably isn't going to shoot the beam far enough to be useful to you, so you're going to want to probably get somewhere between 70 to 100.
Okay.
Because once the beam starts where it starts, once it gets to the farthest corner, you do lose a little bit of power, and you don't want that to
Yeah.
affect like cutting through wood.
Yeah. It's very good to know about the overkill. I wouldn't expect something like that to be an issue, but
Oh yeah, it was. I figured it out. I did the work for you. on
yeah,
that one.
thank you. I
Did it.
appreciate that lots. And, it's interesting. You kind of learn as you go with all this stuff. And, you got to make the errors sometimes before you figure it out. But
Yeah, and I was never like overall, I'm never like a bigger is better person as far as anything goes. I'm a happy medium kind of guy.
yeah,
But for that, I was just like,
get the biggest one.
yeah, like I guess the testosterone kicked in, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna try to do this
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
See what happens.
Yeah. Well, I see the thought process. It almost sounds like more capability. Like
Yeah.
you could do more. What's wrong with that? Like how could that go wrong? But
It
Yeah.
went very wrong.
yeah.
It went very wrong. Because
Yeah.
what mine ended up doing when I knew that it was wrong, instead of shooting one spot, it was shooting two.
Ooh,
And
yeah,
I'm like,
that's not good.
yeah, so like you cut something and there would be a mirror image of it.
Double.
Yeah,
Oh,
double.
That's interesting.
It wouldn't be nice. Like it was, and I was like, oh God, don't tell me this tube is broken. Sure enough, the tube is broken.
It's so sad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially considering the investment.
Yeah. So when it comes to machinery, get something that's slightly more than adequate. This goes for anything in the creative world. If you're trying to buy machinery or equipment, go slightly more than what you need, but don't overshoot it to go beyond that,
Yes.
because you don't know, one, if you need the capability or if you need the scale. But at some point, you can always sell what you have and then upgrade it later versus paying for the upgrade now and being like, I really don't need this. And then you're kind of stuck with it
Right.
because you don't want to sell something more powerful and then buy something lesser necessarily, because they do lose a lot of value when you resell them, obviously.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And most people, if you try to sell it on Facebook Marketplace or wherever you try to sell something, they don't know what they're looking at. They want to like engrave tumblers or do some whatever,
Right.
basic
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
And, they're gonna lowball you, and they don't want to do that. So
No.
that's my laser experience. So
Yeah.
for because I know what you do and I know what
Yeah.
your capabilities and what you're trying to do,
Yeah. I,
keep it under 100 watts over 50.
wonderful advice, and like couldn't be coming from someone better, so I appreciate that a lot. Thank you. I truly appreciate that.
Well, if you're ever in Georgia, you can definitely stop by and check out my shop
I
and see
would
both of them run.
absolutely love to.
Yeah.
That would be a treat.
So I hope that answered your question.
It absolutely did. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, anyway,
70 to 100.
70 to 100, that's your happy
There it
spot.
is.
Yeah. So anyway, okay. So thanks for being here. I
Yeah.
appreciate it so much. I'm so
Yeah.
happy that you were here and we could talk and we could finally meet and have a real discussion.
Yeah, me too. It was a true pleasure. Thank you so much.
So anyway, everybody have a wonderful day. We're gonna sign off and yeah, that's it. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.